Hi, everybody. Welcome into Out of the Gate, Daily Racing Form's weekend handicapping show. My name is Matt Bernier. Thanks so much for joining us. Let's take a look and see what's on deck for this week's edition of Out of the Gate. Mike Beer and I will take a look at some horses to keep an eye on. You can throw them in your DRF Horse Watch in the opening segment. Then we'll take a look at the Red Smith Stakes from Aqueduct. Happens to be the Saturday DRF Bets race of the day. Timeform US's Craig Milkowski will take a look at the pace projector for the Bob Hope Stakes. And Nicole Russo with her Pedigree Pick, she'll also take a look at the Bob Hope Stakes. If that wasn't enough, Beer and I will then give you some opinions for that race out at Del Mar as well. We'll shift our attention to Churchill Downs for their featured event, the River City Handicap. Timeform US Spotlight from David Aragona. He'll also take a look at the Red Smith, and we'll wrap things up with a few best bets between Beer and I. Hopefully we can make you some money this upcoming weekend. Without further ado, let's get things started with this week's Horse Watch. Kick off this week's edition of Out of the Gate with Horse Watch. Let's head on over to Mike Beer and let's head on over to Aqueduct. Let's see what you got for us.
Yeah, Aqueduct last weekend, a 2-year-old filly making her debut named Tidestorm for trainer Michael Matz. Let's look at her debut here, Matt. Maybe I was a little swayed by this being one of, 5 turf races that we've run over the last 6 months here in New York. But I just like this, but she has a lot of pedigree on her side, and she's just one of those first-time starters who did everything right in this race, right from the start. And you're going to see here in the stretch, she's sort of in behind a horse who's been on the lead the entire way. Once Javier Castellano gets her out into the clear late, though, she finishes very gamely here. She's going to get up at the end at a pretty big price. I thought that this was a filly who, based on her pedigree, she can go longer than this, but she ran really well for a first-time starter, and just there were no real mistakes that she made. She was very professional. She might have a lot of upside, this horse.
Like the fact that she went and got that horse down in front of her as well. Promising debut for that horse. I'm going to look with a horse that she's run 13 times, but I have to be honest, she turned into something I never thought she would. Spice Perfection. We're going to take a look at the Betty Grable from this past weekend, opening weekend down at Del Mar. She's in those white blinkers. She's splitting horses right now. She has turned into a really nice filly for Brian Coroner. This is going to be a 91 Beyer speed figure, winning this race by more than 2 lengths. And to be honest, early on in her career, I just thought she was okay, mundane, run of the mill, but she's turned into a really nice filly. And they've talked about bringing her back as a 4-year-old. There's a part of me that looks at it and says, if she's in good form and she's still feeling good, why not take a shot in a race like the La Brea? Maybe the grade 1 level is going to be a little bit too tough for her, but at the end of the day, it's not like she's that much slower than any of the other 3-year-old fillies that would be running in that race, and she's in career form. Spice Perfection, I think she's turned into a very, very nice 3-year-old filly for Coroner. We'll find out. If she doesn't show up in the La Brea, there are going to be plenty of Cal-bred stakes for her next year all over the place. We're going to start things off with the handicapping portion here. Let's take a look at the DRF Bets race of the day for Saturday. Happens to be the Red Smith from Aqueduct. First race we'll dive into on this week's edition of Out of the Gate is the Red Smith Stakes from Aqueduct on Saturday afternoon, carded as race number 8. Also happens to be the DRF Bets race of the day. Let's take a look at the field. You can head on over to video.drf.com for the expanded stakes preview. You can head on over to the Daily Racing Forms YouTube channel and also see it there. And if you want those free formulator past performances, head on over to the Race of the Day page on drf.com. Mike, fingers crossed this race stays on the turf, but it sounds like there's some pretty significant weather rolling through the New York area. It wouldn't be a surprise at all if this is still on the turf. It'll be run over a rather soft going. At the end of the day, Chad Brown, look, he usually shows up with a pretty good charge in any of these graded stakes races on grass. This race, no different. Call provision, he almost got there last year, and I wonder, with a little bit of a cleaner trip, possibly, was he best in there?
Yeah, you know what? There's an argument to be made that he was best in this race last year. We can put the replay up now. I mean, this is him. He sort of gets these kinds of trips in a lot of his races because he's always at the back of the pack. But you're going to see him in significant traffic here through the upper stretch, but really running in this race. He drives through between here. He's going to get up behind the leaders and have to go through between horses again. And then he's just going to miss. Look at it. He's finishing like a wild horse here. This was a really nice performance. He's come back this year as a 5-year-old, Matt. He's only 1 for 6. But he just run 4 triple-digit Beyers in a row. He's been as good this year as he was last year, and he's getting back out to a more appropriate distance for this race.
And he's getting back to Aqueduct. He's 3 for 4 lifetime, never been out of the exacta in those 4 lifetime starts. We respect him. He can certainly run well in here. You and I are seeing this race very similarly. Tell us a little bit about Zulu Alpha.
Yeah, I mean, he's just a horse who's really improved in his last 2 starts. So this is where I'm going to wind up. He got over here from Ireland last year as a 4-year-old, and I thought he looked like a horse who had a lot of potential in his first 2 starts over here, both wins, and he sort of lost his way after that and never really improved. But he's turned it back around, especially in his last 4 starts. The blinkers have come off, and he's really upped his game. Let's go back to his most recent win here in the Sycamore at Keeneland. He got a perfect trip in this race. I realize that. But he also really runs in the stretch. You're going to see him slip up the rail here. That's bigger picture, his now stablemate who's trying to rally behind him. But he wins this race very easily, Matt. Back-to-back triple-digit buyers for this horse. Now he goes into Mike Maker's barn. I just like the way this horse is going right now, and I think he fits really well in this field. And I think he might get another trip like the one he got in this race right here.
I agree with you. From a tactical standpoint, it just feels like Zulu Alpha is going to work at another really good situation in here. He can handle a little bit of give in the ground. That's not going to be an issue for him. You know, the distance isn't a problem. And as you made mention, he's just in career form. A couple of triple-digit buyers in his back pocket in each of the past 2 races. I think he's actually the horse to beat in here. We'll find out what kind of price we get. And again, fingers crossed this race stays on the grass. Mike and I are both going to go with the number 3 Zulu Alpha in the Red Smith. Nicole Russo taking a look at her pedigree pick. She's going to go out to Del Mar, take a look at the Bob Hope, and Craig Milkowski from Timeform US, the pace projector. He's also going to go to the Del Mar Thoroughbred Club and take a look at the 2-year-olds in the Bob Hope. Let's throw through those segments.
Hey everyone, Nicole Russo coming to you for Pedigree Notes and Out of the Gate. And this week, let's take you out to Del Mar for the Grade 3 Bob Hope Stakes for juveniles. A few freshman sires represented in this field with Mucho Gusto by Mucho Macho Man, who's currently 10th on the freshman list, Sueno by Atreides, and Owning by Tappett's Son Flashback. I'm going to key in a little bit on Mucho Gusto here. He's coming off a 4-length debut win and is one of 2 in here for trainer Bob Baffert, who the race will likely key around. Now, sire Mucho Macho Man was a graded winner early in his 3-year-old campaign and was classic placed, but he was a June foal and a big, lanky horse who really blossomed as an older horse to win multiple grade 1s, including the Breeders' Cup Classic. I expected his offspring to be later developing as well, with anything they did early on to be a bonus. Mucho Gusto's female family, also one that tends to develop with experience and also with distance. It's the family of Canadian Horse of the Year Peaks and Valleys and multiple Grade 2 winning Millionaire Alternation. Now, Mucho Gusto has certainly shown the ability early on in his career here, but he definitely strikes me as the type of horse who could really continue on an upward swing. Baffert's other entrant, another debut winner in Metropole, the son of Shackelford, was bred by Darby Dan Farm Interest, and as you'd expect, he's got a stellar female family behind him. This is the family that's produced multiple Grade 1 winner Wonder Again, Japanese champion Grass Wonder, and Grade 1 winner Tribulation. Now, Metropole, another one who's shown the talent early on for sure, but I do expect he'll develop more with distance, and I actually would love to see him on turf in the future, considering that family. And lastly, a quick look at Sparky Bill, who has some stakes experience, was a distant second to Instagram to the Grade 2 Best Pal before winning the Sunny Slope at Santa Anita. The Candy Red Colt is out of the unraced Stormcat mare Lorelei K, who's a half-sister to Grade 1 winner and multiple stakes producer Harmony Lodge, as well as to Grade 2 winner Graham Hall, Grade 3 winner Win McCool, and stakes winner and producer Win's Fair Lady. Harmony Lodge and Win McCool, both by sons of Stormcat, meaning they're bred on the same cross as Lorelei K.
Hi, this is Craig Milkowski of Timeform US for this week's edition of Out of the Gate. Today I'm going to take a look at the Grade 3 Bob Hope Stakes being run at Del Mar. It's the 8th race on Saturday, and it's for 2-year-olds going 7 furlongs on the dirt. First, we're going to take a quick look at the preview page, just kind of list the entrants. We do have morning line odds at this time. You can see who the favorites are. You can see a snapshot of the pace projector. Next, what I want to do is focus in on that pace projector a little bit, just to kind of point out a couple things. One, you can see that the 5 is taking off blinkers here in this race. So because of that, he'll be shown back a little bit in the pace projector. And I've also highlighted the 2 who's shown at the rear. And the reason I do that, we're going to get to him a little later, but that's a horse I actually like a lot in here. And it's at one time I don't agree with the pace projector. I think he's going to be a little bit more forwardly placed than he's shown here. The first horse I want to talk about is Mucho Gusto. He's sent out by Bob Baffert, who I'm sure everybody's familiar with. Second time out, he won easily, breaking his maiden at Los Al first time. Nice Timeform US speed figure of 100. He was even money that day, so he didn't fool anyone. He's listed at 5-2 on the morning line, and I won't be surprised if he gets bet even more than that and winds up going off a heavier favorite. I definitely think he's the one to beat, but I am going to look at a couple alternatives here. The first one is Sparkyville. And what I like about him, he was kind of, just running okay. They tried him in the grade one Del Mar Futurity after he broke his maiden. But then in the interim, he didn't run very well that day, and he was gelded before returning in a listed stake at Santa Anita. And what I like is, of course, I like that he won, but that he jumped up his speed figures quite a bit from an 84 to a 104, which is even faster than the favorite at Mucho Gusto, who I showed you a minute ago. So I think he's a big contender in here, and he's definitely one I'm going to use. Of course, you got to monitor the tote board, see if you're getting value, but I suspect this horse is going to offer a little bit. But the horse I ultimately settled on is Extra Hope. And kind of along the same lines with him, something I always look for with these 2-year-olds is something that changed. We all know they're maturing, they're getting better, they're getting faster. But when you see big jump ups in speed figures, so like he had last time, going from that 88 to a 108 when he broke his maiden, going around 2 turns at Santa Anita, mile in the 16th, is something that would point to more there. What actually happened? Was it just natural maturation or something else? And in this case, he added blinkers for the first time. You can see that there underneath the jockey's name, who Drayden Van Dyke rode him that day. And what I really like, and the reason I pointed him out in the pace projector, because the pace projector bases it on his last 4 races. But I think in his case, you want to lean more towards just looking at that last race, his only one where he had blinkers. He showed a lot more speed. I realized it was a 2-turn race, but he was still right up there on the lead. His pace figures were sharp. He had 115s early, and he was just off the lead, and he just exploded home. Won by nearly 9 lengths, got that big 108 time form US speed figure. So my selection today is going to be Extra Hope. I'm going to play an exacta box with Sparkyville, and then maybe a lesser one with Mucho Gusto if they don't go too crazy at the windows with him. So that's it for this week for Timeform US for Out of the Gate.
DRF Sports Forum Digital Edition, your ultimate weekly betting guide. Published by Daily Racing Form, DRF Sports Forum delivers all of the analysis and insight you need for every NFL game and more than 40 college football matchups. Beat the spread with powerful trends and sharp angles. Tap into best bets, expert picks, parlay winners, and more. All for just $4.99 per issue. Get this week's edition free. Visit drf.com/sportsforum. Enter code DRF Sports.
Are you a horse player looking to raise your game? For over 120 years, expert handicappers have relied on Daily Racing Form as their must-have source for news and data, featuring exclusive buyer speed figures, Timeform US pace figures, and integrated replays. DRF Formulator is the most powerful handicapping tool on the market today. Use what the pros use. Go to drf.com/formulator and enter code DRFTV to get your first card free. drf.com. Raise your game.
Back here on Out of the Gate, Nicole and Craig already took their looks at the Bob Hope. Now it's time for us to take a look at the Bob Hope. Again, you can find the expanded stakes preview over on video.drf.com as well as the Daily Racing Forms YouTube channel. Let's take a look at the field. There's 7 2-year-olds. They'll be going 7/8 of a mile on the main track. And Mike, this is a scenario where Bob Baffert is well represented. He has 2 horses in here. Richard Mandela has 1. There's a few different things going on. The one thing that is undeniable, the only stakes winner in this field is a horse called Sparkyville, and you may end up getting a very, very fair price on a horse that on his best day, he might actually be better than these horses.
Yeah, it's very true. I mean, he comes in with the top last out figure in the field with an 83. We're going to look at that stakes win right now for him. This is, a race where, he was dropping out of a couple of graded stakes races where he was just in a little bit too tough. He was ridden with a lot of confidence in this race, I thought. You can see Savagery, who's also in this race, was up there contesting the pace in front of him. But it's all Sparkyville here in the late stages, Matt. He just takes this race over late, and he's going to go clear. I thought this was a really nice effort for a horse who was just much the best in this race.
First start as a gelding, I couldn't find anything to knock about it. It was a short field, and he'll be facing certainly better horses this time around, but he is the class of the field. You see names like Game Winner in there, Instagram in his PPs. Find out what Sparkyville can do. There are some interesting fresh faces in here, though. Bob Baffert, again, well represented. He has 2 horses in here. I personally think you have the right one in Mucho Gusto.
Yeah, I looked at it the same way. Baffert's going to run 2 horses in here, both of them right off of their maiden wins. But Metropole down on the rail, Not that I would be shocked if he runs a good race here, but I didn't really like him all that much. I do think Mucho Gusto is the one that you want of the two Baffert horses. Let's look at his debut right now, 80 by our speed figure, but this horse broke from the rail. He had a lot of speed. He got right to the front. I thought Talamo rode him pretty confidently until the top of the stretch. He just sort of let him float off the inside. Once he sets him down, though, I really like the way he kicks in here and finishes this race off. He puts in a good run here, the last eighth of a mile, and makes me feel like the 7 furlongs won't be a trouble for him in this spot. And it just looks like he might be the best speed in this race, too. He looks like he's going to be pretty tough in here.
I think the other encouraging thing, that race coming at Los Alamitos, say what you will about Los Al as a racetrack, and overall it can make good horses look bad, bad horses look good, but that long stretch, I think that's going to translate to the 7/8 distance. And like you say, he may be the best speed in this spot. I'm going to go just to the inside with the number 2, Extra Hope for Richard Mandela. And really, this is going to be, I think, an important race for this horse. Was it a matter in his most recent start, which we'll take a look at right now? Was this breakthrough performance a product of the blinkers going on, the equipment change, or was it a product of just beating inferior company? You see him on the front end, he's already gone. And not only is he going to go off and win, but he's going to win for fun by about 8 and change. The blinkers going on, I do wonder if that was the thing that all of a sudden the light bulb came on and now he's put it together. But until he does it against better horses, you really never know. We're going to have to find out. I think he has a nice sort of pressing gear. That slight turn back in distance, I think, should be beneficial for him. I'll take a shot with Extra Hope over Mike's top pick, Mucho Gusto, in the Grade 3 Bob Hope. We transition to turf. We transition back to the East Coast. Let's take a look at the main event from Churchill Downs on Saturday. It's the River City. Featured event at Churchill Downs Saturday afternoon is the Grade 3 River City Handicap, 1 1/8 on the turf course. Let's take a look at that field. Mike, there's a name in here, and you see on the morning line at odds of 8-5, Mr. Misunderstood. He is rock solid for Brad Cox. Really, you look at him overall, 11 of 20 lifetime, 10 of 15 on the grass. He has a little bit of versatility. If you need to use him early, you can. Really, he deserves to be the favorite in this race.
Yeah, I agree with that. He is he is a deserving clear-cut favorite, and he's just the horse to beat in here, dropping out of the Grade 1 Shadwell turf, where he just couldn't get involved. His best race just makes him really tough in this race. I did sort of feel like when you go through this race top to bottom, he's got maybe a small, I don't think he has a huge edge on this field. He is the right favorite, but I don't know if he's one I'm terrified to take a shot against.
Well, we're going to go back to his run 3 starts back. This is his most recent victory down at Ellis Park, and this was in one of the Kentucky Downs preview races. And you see him right now, he's already taken over, and you'll note he was relatively close to a soft pace on that day. There's a real scenario where this race here on Saturday doesn't feature much pace. Do you think he's closer to the front end?
Yeah, I mean, that's the good thing about him, though, is that you can, if they don't, go in front of him, he'll just sit right up close. And if they go a little faster, he's fine rallying from out of it, too. So that's a real feather in this horse's cap. He will get the right trip, it seems like, no matter how they run it. And then the question is, how short a price do you want to take on him?
I think it's another thing. You and I spoke about it in the stakes preview. You can find that over on video.drf.com or the Daily Racing Form YouTube channel. That we respect him. He is obviously the horse to beat in here, but we both want to take little shots against him with some more intriguing prices. You're going to go to the far outside with the former Queen's Plate winner, the number 8, Sir Dudley Diggs.
Yeah, Sir Dudley Diggs. We'll see what he can do in this race. It feels like, maybe he finds graded stakes races on turf a little tough for him, but I sort of feel like overall he fits really well in this field. We're going to go back to the replay of his most recent race. This is back on turf for him after a couple of synthetic races, and this is 1 1/4 too. I realize that he's a Queen's Plate winner at 1 1/4, but I really don't think he wants to go quite that far. He's pretty game in this race, though, Matt. The horses that are in front of him that are going to run 1-2, they were that way around the track. If you believe the clock in this race, that last quarter there's 22 in a piece, and he's trying to make up ground in there. It's just not going to happen. I thought he ran really well. I think he can get a similar up-close trip in this race, and I like the shorter distance for him, especially at the price he projects to be in that 8 or 10 to 1 range. I'm going to take a shot with this horse.
I'm going to take a shot with the horse drawn 2 posts to the inside. That's the number 6, Team Colors. Team Colors most recently went out for Joe Sharp in his first start off of the claim. 2 starts back up at Saratoga, clipped heels, dumped the rider. That was the end of that. He comes back in this race we're going to take a look at from Keeneland most recently. A non-winners of 3 other than. You see him on the far outside in those familiar Grady silks, orange and black. And it's going to take him a little while to change leads, but I like the fact that once he does, he's very, very game and goes and runs down that horse that's out there on the front end. That's Krampus. You've already had a horse exit that race and earn a 93 by your speed figure. There's a part of me that looks at it and says, Mr. Misunderstood, he can certainly win. I respect him. He's going to be a short price. If this distance ends up being an issue for some of these horses, which I think it could, Team Colors, I have no concerns about the mile and an eighth. I think this is really what he wants. We'll find out if the pace compromises him, but he should be a little bit of a decent price in the River City. I'll go with Team Colors. Now it's time for a look at the Timeform US Spotlight with David Aragona. He's going to go up to Aqueduct and take a look at the Red Smith.
Hi everyone, I'm David Aragona coming to you with this week's Timeform US Spotlight. I'm here in a pretty snowy New York City, and weather's been a pretty difficult thing to deal with in New York as of late, so turf racing has been in jeopardy for the past few days, and we're going to discuss a turf race on Saturday at Aqueduct, but we'll see how the weather plays out. Hopefully this race stays on the turf. If it does stay on the turf, it's likely to be yielding or soft. I'm talking about race 8 on Saturday. It's the Grade 3 Red Smith Handicap for older horses, going 1 3/8 on the turf, around 3 turns over the Aqueduct turf course, and it drew a pretty diverse field, a large field. It's a full field of horses. A few main track onlys are also drawn towards the outside, but 13 horses entered for turf. Only 10 will get to run because that's the limit placed on the body of the field in this race. The horse that's likely to go favorite is Zulu Alpha, who's one of the horses that is likely to be forwardly placed in this race. And if we take a look at the Timeform US pace projector, while it's not predicting a pace that's necessarily going to be fast or slow, there are a few horses in this race that prefer to be placed out towards the front of the pack. One of those is obviously the number 2 horse, Village King, who's a long shot in this race, but he does his best running up towards the front. He's going to have to improve. A horse that I think is going to be a bit more forwardly placed than the pace projector really indicates is the number 1 horse, Teodoro. He only has one race in the United States where they set a pretty slow pace in the Turf Classic over a very soft turf course. So that's not really a true indication of where his pace figures might be at if he had a larger body of work in the U.S. So I think he's a horse that might be a bit closer than the projector actually indicates. And Zulu Alpha, he's the number 3 horse. He prefers to race up close to the pace, doesn't really need the lead, but he'll be up near the front of the pack. And we'll take a look at the PPs of Zulu Alpha because I really do think he is the horse to beat in this race. His last 2 speed figures have just been very solid. 126 and 123, probably a number somewhere in the mid to high 120s is going to be good enough to win this race on the Timeform US speed figure scale. And Zulu Alpha has really been unstoppable since they took the blinkers off earlier this year. He's trying to win his 3rd race in a row, actually for a 3rd different trainer, as Mike Maker takes over for John Ortiz, who won with him last time in the Sycamore at Keeneland. He got a very good trip in that Sycamore, just kind of stalking on the inside the entire way. The rail opened up at the top of the stretch, and it seemed like there was really good fresh ground for him to come through up at the inside, and he went through that hole and just proved better than Arklow, who actually came back and ran very well in the Breeders' Cup Turf, finishing 4th in that very tough spot. But Zulu Alpha, he's going to have to bring his form to New York. He's going to have to face some really tough horses, which he hasn't really done before, going a distance that he hasn't done that much, because while he did handle the 3 turns in the Sycamore last time, he's really been more of a 2-turn horse for the majority of his career. He really woke up going that distance last time, so we'll see if this is ultimately what he wants to do. I think he is the horse to beat, and he projects to work out a pretty good trip, but at a short price, I want to take a look at some other horses. One horse that I'm kind of disappointed is drawn on the also eligible list is Focus Group, the number 12 horse. I don't know, maybe it's the fact that he doesn't own an integrated stakes win. That's why he didn't make it into the main body of the field. But if he does draw into this race, he's going to be a major player. I actually have him as the 2nd choice on the morning line in this race. If he can get back to his race in the Johns Call 2-back, where he beat today's rival Call Provision, actually his stablemate, he's going to be awfully tough to hold off in this race, because when he's right and when he gets the distance that he wants, which I think he's going to get today, he's a horse that has a lethal late kick. He can really run you down at the end of his races. Last time out, they stepped him up into Grade 1 company and the Canadian International, and there were some tough European horses coming over for that race that just proved to be a little bit too much for him to reel in at the end of that 1.5-mile contest. But he's a horse that I think has the class to be competitive with this field, and if he draws into the race, he is a major player that I want to use. Also, I'm not going to highlight Call Provision, his stablemate. He's also in this race, and he's another horse that I think you have to take seriously because he does handle these longer distances. But 2 horses that I want to focus on in my wagers in this race. One of them is Inspector Lindley. Now, the major question for Inspector Lindley is not really class, it's more one of distance, because he's a horse that has really excelled at distances of a mile and a 16th, a mile and an eighth. He's never gone a mile and 3/8 before, and I think stretching out to this farther distance, it might work for him, because he's a horse that doesn't really seem to have that quick turn of foot that really makes milers and 1.16 horses successful. He can kind of grind you down at the end of his races, and also he's a horse that is able to handle yielding and good turf courses, and that's going to be a real asset for him on Saturday, because the turf course is very unlikely to be anything close to firm when we run this race. So Inspector Lindley is going to get his preferred course, and I think just the way this race is run and the fact that he can kind of shut off and sit behind horses in the early going and produce that grinding late kick, it might allow him to get this distance. Based on pedigree, he's supposed to be able to.
Best bet time here on Out of the Gate. Mike Beer, the opener at Aqueduct on Saturday.
Yeah, let's get it out of the way early here in race number 1, and we'll avoid all the turf races too. Who knows if they're going to be on. It's only a 10-claimer, 1-turn mile. I'm going to give No Distortion a look in this race, second off the claim for Dermot Magner. We're going to look at his most recent race. Now, I realize in this spot here, he is defeated at the end of the day here by a horse who was very, very hard to have at a very big price. But the only reason that the horse that wins the race winds up getting up is because No Distortion was sent early to go contest this pace. You can see him down on the inside. He's still dueling all the way down to the end. He's going to get tired and get out finished. But he did a lot of the hard work in this race and set it up for the closers. He's taken a slight drop in class for this race, and I like that they're stretching him back out a little bit. This is a horse who's been concentrated on sprinting lately, but the first 5 wins of his career all came routing on the dirt. I think he's going to be just fine stretching out to the mile here. And he's just facing a bunch of horses. It feels like they're well past their prime. If he could just get back to one of his good races, this is a field he can beat, and he's 6-1 on the line.
I'm going to go out to Del Mar, the 7th race. It's Cal-bred fillies and mares. It's a maiden special weight race, a mile on the turf. The real story for me with this race, you have some horses in here that I hate to say it, but they're proven losers. They don't like to win races. You've got a horse like Radish, who's 4-1 on the morning line. She's over 22 and 13 times she's run second or third. I want a bit of a fresh face, and I suppose you could say that the horse that I like, Weather Market, might be a little bit compromised because her most recent start came against Maiden Claiming Company for Mike Pender. We're going to take a look at that replay right now. There's a part of me, though, that this is sneaky, one of my favorite moves. Taking a horse from a Maiden Claiming event, if you see a good enough effort, maybe you don't really want to lose him, and you go in and you protect him. And guess what? In a spot like this, there are no superstars in here. You're going to see Weather Market come with a legitimate late bid. She finishes nicely. I think there's a real scenario where she at least has a puncher's chance in here. She's 6-1 on the morning line. She may not be the most likely winner in this race, but I think she has every bit as good a chance as a horse like Radish or even a horse like Paprika, who's going to be stretching out in distance for the first time. It just is kind of one of those races where if you don't like the horses that have proven that they can't get through this, take a little bit of a fresh face. Second time going out for Mike Pender. I'll go with the number 6. Weather Market in the 7th at Del Mar on Saturday for my best bet. I'd like to thank you for watching this week's edition of Out of the Gate. You can find all of these episodes as well as all the stakes previews over on video.drf.com, as well as the Daily Racing Form's YouTube channel for all the latest from the Daily Racing Form on Twitter at DRF Inside Post, and all the latest from DRF TV. You can find that on Twitter at DRF Video. For Mike Beer, everyone else that has contributed, I'm Matt Bernier. Thanks for watching. Catch you again next week when your horses break out of the gate.